eLTER, Integrated European Long-Term Ecosystem, Critical Zone, and Socio-Ecological Research.
Hello, everybody. I'm Alexandre Lhosmot. I just defended my PhD 2 weeks ago, and my advisor, Guillaume Bertrand and Marc Steinman from Chrono-Environnement Laboratory, located at Besançon in eastern France. And I'm working on water and carbon transfer between peatlands, atmosphere, and aquifers. And so my research focus is applied of the Franche peatland located in the Jura Mountains. And the site is part of the French National Observatory of Peatlands named SNO-Tourbière, and also is part of the French network of critical zone observatories named OSCAR. In addition, the site constitutes a regional natural reserve. So as a consequence of this institutional and natural reserve, the work that we're doing involves many researchers and also from different laboratories, but also local managers. And a part of these colleagues is displayed on these slides. So today I will begin my presentation with the context and the site presentation. And after I will present you two examples of environmental monitoring that allow to have a better understanding of hydrological and carbon processes in peatlands and in critical zone. So let's begin with the question, what is a peatland? So a peatland is a wetland which is permanently waterlogged, and due to this anoxic condition and low oxygen availability, the rate of organic matter production is higher than the rate of organic matter degradation. We can here describe peatland as a volume of peat. Is quite simple, but a volume of peat which is separated in two peat layers. The first one, the top peat layer, is named the aquatone. It's punctually oxic due to the seasonal variation of water table depth, and also it's the support of vegetation. And as it's the newly formed peat, it's more permeable and porous peat. Below this aquatone, it is the catotone, which is older peat, permanently waterlogged and less permeable. This volume of peat is subject to ingoing and outgoing flow of water, as we can see on this scheme. And some of these water fluxes are purveyors of carbon. You have, for example, inorganic carbon supply from groundwater, or inorganic and organic carbon exported at the outlet of peatlands. In addition, peatlands exchange directly carbon with the atmosphere through vertical fluxes. For the carbon dioxide, the processes related to these fluxes are mainly located in the aquatone because of the punctual aerobic condition allow ecosystem respiration that emits carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, and while photosynthesis capture atmospheric carbon dioxide. In addition to the this favorable condition, anoxic condition, and favorable conditions to methane production in the deep peat layer. This methane go to atmosphere, but a part of this methane is oxidized by methanotroph bacteria and converts into carbon dioxide, as we can see on this slide. So here we have a quite simple but model of main water and carbon fluxes in peatlands, and we can see that they are connected and very linked. And so, in addition, peatlands, there is also a complex system between carbon dynamic, water dynamic, and also biological processes, because the wet conditions control vegetation, but also microorganisms along the vertical axis, the vertical depth of the peatland. So, due to this functioning of peatlands, they provide huge ecosystem services at the global scale, despite peatlands cover only 3% of emerged surface area. From a carbon perspective, due to accumulation of organic matter over time, peatlands store about 1/3 of the global organic soil carbon pool. Also, from the water resource, peatlands store a huge quantity of liquid fresh water, and this water is go to downstream ecosystem slowly. And then for the biodiversity, peatlands participate to the global biodiversity as we can find specific and specialized biodiversity. But these ecosystem services are threatened by human activities at global scale, such as climate change, increase of temperature, increase of frequency and intensity of drought, but also by local disturbances, because human activities, local human activities, come usually with drainage of these peatlands. And this goal, all these disturbances impact the hydrological functioning of peatlands, and we observe the drying of peatlands, which impact the carbon dynamic and also the biodiversity. And so it has question about the future of this ecosystem services. So it is in this context what we study peatlands today. So let's go into the presentation of the site, which is the Franche peatland located in eastern France. It's a temperate and mid-altitude mountainous peatland at 840 meters of altitude. We are in the Jura Mountains, which is a folded mountains constituted of carbonated rocks from Jurassic and Cretaceous, but is located at the northwest of the Alps. And here you can see the red and yellow points corresponds to location of peatlands. You can see that peatlands are located mainly in the east part of the Jura Mountain because it is the more elevated parts of the Jura Mountains. And if we look at the annual precipitation, the map you are seeing here, we can see that in the eastern part of the Jura Mountain, there is higher precipitation, and also it's the colder region, and so low temperature and high precipitation are favorable hydroclimatic conditions to have water saturation at the soil surface. In addition to this hydroclimatic constraint, there is geological constraint that allow to explain the distribution of peatlands inside the Jura Mountains. In fact, peatlands are mainly located in depression, what we call a syncline in the Jura Mountain. Here I present you the Franche-Comté syncline. Here you have Pontarlier city, and here the Franche-Comté complex, in which there is the Franche peatlands, which is instrumented. You can see in this depression that there is a lot of wetlands and peatlands of international value, Ramsar area, Natura 2000 area. And the question what we can ask is why peatlands are in this depression. For that, I propose you to see geological and schematic cross-section perpendicular to the syncline. And we can see here that the syncline is constituted of Cretaceous, marl, and limestones, while the adjacent anticlines are made by Upper Jurassic limestones. But you can also see that in the syncline, there is moraine deposits from the last glacial periods, and this moraine have a topography of basins and also are poorly permeable. So there is here a geological constraint that allow water saturation at the soil surface. So I will go to present you the instrumentation of the Franche peatland in this large peatland complex. Here the picture is the instrumented site. The wood corresponds to wooded peatlands, and here you have in wet contour the active Franche peatland. We say active because it's covered by sphagnum, dominated by sphagnum mosses, and sphagnum allow to accumulate peat a long time. You have a fen area in brown contour, and the main outlet of the site, which is monitored since 2014 with electrical conductivity monitoring and also discharge monitoring. All the circle corresponds to a piezometer, allowing to monitor the water table depth, but also to sample water for analysis. And at the central part of the active peatland, there is a scientific platform supporting meteorological station and hydrological measurements. Also, more recently, there is still a 2019 NEDI covariance storer measuring gas fluxes between peatland and atmosphere. Yes, this this instrumented site ask a question that I would like to add elements of response is how long-term monitoring can help to understand the peatland functioning. Here, I will present you the long-term hydrological monitoring example, and after the greenhouse gas measuring at high frequency monitoring. So, for the first example, I show you again the active peatland in green on the slide, and you can see that the main water surface flow go to the main outlets at the northeast. On the plot, you have the daily water table depth on the vertical axis and the daily mean discharge on the horizontal axis. You can see that the relation is complex and non-linear, and that And when the water table is shallow, a little variation of water table depth have a big consequence of discharge. So it shows us that there is different response of the peatlands and of precipitation if depending of the hydrological condition of the peatland. In addition, at the ecosystem scale, the site was restored in the framework of an European program of restoration named Life Tourbière du Jura, because a lot of drain decrease the water table in the peatland. And here the purple line corresponds to the neutralization of drain made in 2015 and 16. And so this restoration was monitored thanks to local managers and scientists. And we follow this monitoring with pond pipe piezometer located at this blue star. And there is piezometer measuring hydraulic pressure in the surface peat layer in green on the little shame here. A piezometer monitoring the hydraulic pressure in the intermediate peat layer, and then a third piezometer monitoring the deeper peat layer at approximately 2.5 meter depth. So we observed that before, and there is an increase after the restoration of hydraulic pressure within each of depth of piezometer. But we observed that before the restoration, the intermediate peat layer was in depression compared to the surface and deep peat layer. And after the restoration, there is an inversion of hydraulic pressure gradients. And you can see that the yellow curve is higher pressure than the surface and deep peat layer. So these elements show allow us to, this monitoring of restoration allow us to have better understanding of the hydraulic connection between the wooded peatlands that are more elevated and the active peatlands. And we interpreted these results as a lateral reactivation of lateral inflow from the wooded peatlands to the active peatlands. So in addition to this hydrodynamic data, we also monitored the electrical conductivity at the outlets of the peatland. And here this graph shows you the mean summer electrical conductivity function of a previous winter recharge of rainfall. You can see that there is a strong positive correlation, and we interpreted this graph as question about seasonal transfer of water, as the electrical conductivity is a proxy of water rock interaction and water mineralization. And we have a working hypothesis from these elements that higher the winter recharge is, higher there is a transfer of mineralized water that we can see the following summer at the outlets. And reciprocally, a lower winter recharge, we have low mineralized water at the outlet of the peatland the following summer. In addition to these results, we also have geomorphological evidences. Here you find the active peatland in green, and the yellow star corresponds to a sinkhole, a karstic sinkhole located just next to the peatland. And this sinkhole first shows us that the moraine layer is discontinuous. For example, the outcrop in the sinkhole is calcareous of Cretaceous, sorry. And secondly, we also observe a complex hydrological behavior because the sinkhole can be filled in water during high flow period. So we are currently in progress to better understand this relation, but it asks questions between the hydraulic relation between karstic, moraine, and peatland in this mountainous area. So thanks to this element, we proposed a conceptual scheme of water supplying the peatlands that we published in Eco-Hydrology journal, and the scheme is corresponds to a cross-section along this dashed black line. This is the conceptual model showing us that in mountainous environments, peatlands can be fed by different water origin, and it's nested and complex water system. So here we work, this first example shows us that water functioning in peatland is complex, but we also see that hydrological and carbon dynamics are linked, and so we need to monitor also the carbon dynamic. So I will go to the I'm going to the second example of monitoring at Fran, which is monitoring of eddy covariance, thanks to eddy covariance measurements of methane and carbon dioxide. And today I will focus on methane because we analyze the data, a lot of data, and we published some of this data in the Ecosystem Journal as we try to understand and delineate the main biotic and abiotic factors over these methane fluxes. So in this at different time scale, I will begin with the larger time scale, which is the interannual time scale. And here we show, we highlight a water table depth control of methane fluxes. Okay, you have the top graph is the water table depth curve, and at the bottom is the methane fluxes between the atmosphere and the peatland. Positive fluxes means that methane is emitted in direction to the atmosphere. We have I put in evidence the summer period, July to September, and 2019 and 2020 are dry year, as we can see, compared to 2021, which was a wet summer. And we also observe that for this wet summer, there is higher methane emissions. So methane emission increase with water table depth in the peatland, which is when the water is shallow to the surface. In addition, at a seasonal scale, we show that the temperature is a good proxy of methane fluxes, as we can see on this plot. It's the mean monthly temperature of air and different depth in the peatland. You can see that methane emissions are the higher in summer when the temperature are the higher. It's not surprising because methane production increase with temperature. But when we look about the winter period and the lowest temperature here in January, we do not have the lowest methane fluxes. Lowest methane fluxes were recorded at springtime and for the 3 years of monitoring. And in addition, this lowest methane fluxes are characterized by negative fluxes. It means that the oxidation processes are higher than the production processes and in this area. And so that punctually, the peatland acted as a sink of methane. To better understand this, this negative fluxes, we look at temperature at different depths in the peatlands. Here, this plot is the temperature evolution from February to May in surface, in brown color, and in blue at 60 centimeter depth. And we can observe that there is a faster increase of the temperature on surface compared to depth. And so it means the thermic inertia of peat at depth, where the temperature increased slowly. And so it would have a repercussion over the methanotrophic and methanogenic activity, because the methane producer are located mainly in anaerobic condition at depth. And so here the production is slow, the increase of production is slow, while at the surface where there is methanotrophic bacteria that can oxidize methane, the high increase of temperature will boost their activity. But after that, we want to have more information about this negative fluxes. And so we look at the diurnal cycle of methane exchanges. And here I show you the month of May for the 3 years. And for each year, we observe that the negative fluxes of methane were recorded at the midday. This cycle, this diurnal cycle, was also observed all over the year, as we can see for the month of November here, with lowest methane fluxes at midday. So this diurnal cycle could be due to daily variation of temperature. Higher temperature in surface during the day could favorize methanotrophic activity, but there is time lag between the peak of temperature and the peak, the lowest methane fluxes, and so it could not be the only explanation. And so for that, we look at other processes that could control oxidation of methane. And in particular here, I show you that the negative methane fluxes are concomitant with negative carbon dioxide fluxes. And negative carbon dioxide fluxes means that there is a strong activity of photosynthesis. And so, okay, there is possibly a link between photosynthesis and methane and oxidation of methane, but which could be this wall? So for that, we go into a literature and we see that sphagnum mosses that cover peatlands and dominated the site have in the hyaline cells methanotroph bacteria, endosymbiotic methanotroph bacteria that can consume methane and produce carbon dioxide. In addition, the sphagnum photosynthesis, but also all the microorganisms associated to sphagnum, mixotroph and phototroph, could, during the day with photosynthesis, produce oxygen, and this oxygen could favor the methane oxidation. So to sum up these elements, we show that at the interannual scale, the water table depth control the size of acrothem catothem, and so the methane emission. At seasonal scale, there is a big control of temperature that allow to explain the negative fluxes at the surface during spring because of highest increase of temperature in surface and slow increase to thermic inertia at depth. And then to better explain the diurnal variation of methane fluxes, it seems that there is a control of photosynthesis that need further investigation. So to conclude, the long-term monitoring of hydrological and greenhouse gases fluxes brings elements to better understand the complex functioning of the critical zone. And in addition to this long-term monitoring, with specific and punctual analysis, complementary analysis, it could constitute a real added value to understand the processes and challenges of the critical zone. And such long-term monitoring can be a good basis for implementing new approaches. And this seems to be in line with the eLTER spirit. Thank you to your attention.